Nothing like a bloodbath to start the day.
They call you peacemaker.
I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I need to kill to get it.
Heroes save the day. Villains try to destroy it. What about those that live in between? Welcome to the rise of cinema's most compelling figures, the antiheroes. In this video, we'll explore how antiheroes have evolved across the decades, reflecting the shifting attitudes, anxieties, and values of society. An antihero isn't just your classic cape-wearing savior or noble warrior. They're flawed, conflicted, and sometimes dangerous. But they're the ones we root for anyway. They walk the line between right and wrong, justice and revenge, honor and survival. They don't save the world because it's the right thing to do. They save it because it's personal. And in today's world, that makes him more real than any traditional hero ever could. The 1980s were marked by gritty realism, skepticism toward authority, and the aftermath of political and social turmoil such as the Vietnam War, the Watergate scandal, and the Cold War. These historical forces shaped a generation that no longer fully trusted institutions or heroic narratives. As a result, the anti-heroes of this era were defined by their rugged individualism, deep-seated rebellion, and unapologetic moral ambiguity. They often operated outside the law, resisted conformity, and were driven by personal codes rather than societal ideas. Their struggles reflected the cultural tensions of the time, between patriotism and disillusionment, ambition and corruption, survival and destruction. Tony Montana from Scarface personified the greed-driven, success-at-any-cost mentality of the 80s. His ruthless pursuit of power and wealth captured the dark side of the American dream, illustrating a society increasingly fixated on excess and ambition. Snake Plissken from Escape from New York embodied the growing distrust towards institutions and authority. In a world of corruption and betrayal, Snake's cynicism and self-interest mirrored societal disillusionment, setting the stage for anti-heroes who operate purely out of survival instinct rather than moral conviction. John Rambo in First Blood represented the emotional scars of the Vietnam War, highlighting the era's unresolved traumas. Forced into violence by societal rejection, Rambo symbolized how anti-heroes emerge from injustice and personal pain, creating a template for complex characters motivated by past trauma. In the 90s, anti-heroes evolved into deeper philosophical figures who wrestled with identity, purpose, and the absurdities of modern life. This decade saw the rise of characters who were not just reacting to external systems, but internally unraveling as they navigated a world dominated by consumer culture, corporate influence, and a growing sense of spiritual emptiness. The explosion of mass media and pop culture created a hyper-aware generation, and anti-heroes began reflecting a kind of postmodern disillusionment. They questioned not just authority, but the very fabric of meaning, what it means to be authentic, to rebel, or to find purpose in a commodified, disconnected society. Tyler Durden from Fight Club took rebellion further, confronting not just authority, but societal norms, consumerism, and identity itself. His charismatic nihilism marked a shift towards anti-heroes who were ideological provocateurs, pushing audiences to question their own beliefs and complacency. Jules Winfield from Pulp Fiction offered a reflective anti-hero, whose journey from violent criminality to spiritual contemplation reflected a generation struggling with moral relativism. Jules represented a turning point, moving the anti-hero from pure rebellion toward introspection and the quest for redemption. The Dude from The Big Lebowski reflected a passive resistance to societal pressures. He embodied an anti-hero who was not defined by action or violence, but by his refusal to conform to traditional roles or ambitions. His laid-back demeanor and rejection of societal expectations captured the 90s counterculture ethos perfectly. The early 2000s saw anti-heroes become darker and morally complex. Shaped by a global atmosphere of fear and uncertainty and shifting ethical boundaries in the wake of 9/11, terrorism, mass surveillance, and questions of national security gripped public consciousness, and cinema began reflecting those anxieties through characters who navigated morally gray territories. These anti-heroes were no longer just rebels or misfits, they were often protectors burdened by the cost of their choices, questioning whether the ends truly justified the means. As society grappled with the balance between freedom and control, justice and vengeance, these characters became avatars for our conflicted values, embodying the difficult compromises and ethical dilemmas of a world where clear answers no longer seem possible. Batman in The Dark Knight showcased a hero who was morally compromised by necessity. In a world where traditional justice was failing, Batman's willingness to blur ethical lines underscored society's fear about security, privacy, and justice. His vigilantism mirrored societal debates about sacrificing freedoms for safety. V from V for Vendetta evolved the antihero into a revolutionary figure. His actions reflected the anxiety surrounding authoritarianism and personal liberty, presenting an antihero whose methods were as problematic as the tyranny he opposed. He marked a clear evolution from questioning norms to actively challenging oppressive systems. Rorschach from Watchmen represented a darker evolution, absolute morality taken to extremes. His uncompromising worldview reflected the growing cynicism and moral complexity of society, showing that even antiheroes' rigid principles could lead to unsettling outcomes. Today's antiheroes embrace irony, humor, and hyperviolence, reflecting a culture that is deeply skeptical of traditional narratives, moral absolutes, and institutional trust. In an age of information overload, online discourse, and constant media reinvention, audiences crave characters who acknowledge the absurdity of their world. Modern antiheroes often break the fourth wall, challenge genre conventions, and confront their flaws head-on. They thrive in the gray zones, delivering justice through violent or unorthodox means, often while mocking the very idea of being a hero. This generation of antiheroes reflects our obsession with moral nuance, authenticity, and the idea that imperfection isn't just acceptable, it's relatable and in many cases admirable. Deadpool's meta-humor and self-awareness signal an anti-hero who openly mocks traditional heroism. His chaotic nature embodies modern skepticism toward authority, heroism, and narrative convention, embracing complexity and authenticity through irony and self-parody. John Wick is the epitome of modern anti-hero simplicity and visceral appeal, violent vengeance as moral injustice. His popularity underscores our fascination with anti-heroes who embody raw emotional catharsis and personal integrity, free from institutional restraints. Peacemaker, ironically named, reflects contemporary society's struggle with good intentions versus destructive outcomes. His misguided righteousness exemplifies the modern anti-hero's complexity, navigating a morally ambiguous landscape where intentions alone aren't enough to justify actions. From rebellious individuals of the 80s to introspective provocateurs of the 90s, morally complex vigilantes of the 2000s, and ironic anti-heroes of today, these characters have continually evolved, reflecting changing societal values and anxieties. Anti-heroes are more than compelling figures, they're mirrors to our collective identity, revealing how we perceive morality, heroism, and humanity itself. So who's your favorite anti-hero and why? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the movies that define us.
You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy.